You have worn two swords your entire life, and it has never once occurred to you that this might end. Not the swords themselves. Those can be taken, lost, broken. But the right to wear them. The right that separates you from every farmer, every merchant, every man in Japan who bows when you pass, and does not raise his eyes until you have gone. You are 37 years old. You have served the same domain since you were 14. You have never questioned the structure of the world you were born into, because the structure of the world you were born into is the only structure that has ever existed. It is 1873. The emperor's new government has just announced that commoners may now legally carry swords. You read the edict twice. Then you set it down and you do not pick it up again because there is a second edict behind it that you are not yet ready to read, and some part of you already knows what it says. The second edict says that you cannot carry them either. Not anymore. Not you, not any samurai, not anywhere in Japan. The sword that has hung at your side since the morning your father tied it there is now a criminal act. The government calls it the Sword Abolition Edict. They announce it the way they announce a new tax, in clean administrative language, with a date, with penalties, as though they are rescheduling a ferry crossing, as though they have not just removed the one thing that has made you, across 23 years of service, legible to yourself. You stand in your house and you look at the swords on the wall, and you understand for the first time what it means to have built an entire self on something the government can abolish in a sentence. Your father died a samurai. His father died a samurai. Every man in your line for 400 years has died a samurai, which is to say every man in your line has died knowing exactly who he was. The certainty was not arrogance. It was not pride in the vanity sense. It was simply that the world had a shape, and your place in it had a name, and the name explained everything. Your obligations, your relationships, your reason for existing, the correct way to sit, to eat, to address a superior, to correct an inferior, the specific distance at which you bowed to a man of higher rank, and the specific depth required by each difference in station. None of this was constraint. It was structure. It was the architecture of a life that did not require you to invent yourself from nothing each morning. You woke up, and you were a samurai, and the day arranged itself around that fact. Now the day will not arrange itself around anything at all. The stipend goes next. You knew it was coming. The government has been systematic about this, moving from one pillar to the next with the same clean administrative efficiency they used on the swords. First, the domains were dissolved. Then the lords, your lord, the man your family served for 3 generations, was made a prefectural governor, a title that means something in the new order and nothing to you. Now the stipend. The rice income your family has received since before your grandfather's grandfather is being commuted into government bonds. A one-time payment. They will give you money, and you will use it to become something else. A farmer, a merchant, a man who makes things or sells things or moves things between places. A man who produces, in the new government's language, something of economic value. You have spent your entire life producing something that the new government has decided has no economic value at all. It was called loyalty. It was called service. It was called being the kind of man who would die without hesitating for something larger than himself. And it turns out that this quality, which your entire civilization spent 400 years selecting for and refining and encoding into every ritual of your existence, is not a skill the new Japan has any use for. You are 37 years old, and you do not know how to do anything else. There are men in your situation who find ways through. You have heard of them. Men who cut their hair, the topknot that has identified you as samurai since childhood, that your wife ran her fingers through on your wedding night and called beautiful. Cut it off and put on Western clothes and take jobs in the new ministries, administrative positions, translation work. The government needs men who are educated and disciplined and capable of following orders without complaint. And samurai are educated and disciplined and have spent their lives following orders. So in this one narrow way, the new Japan has a use for them. The use is to process the paperwork of their own dissolution. You have been asked twice whether you would be interested in such a position. You have not answered. This is not pride. Or it is pride, but not the kind that is simply vanity wearing a serious face. It is something harder to name. It is the feeling that if you take the job, put on the Western clothes, cut the hair, then whatever you were is finished. Not ended with dignity, the way a fire ends, burning until there is nothing left to burn, but extinguished, smothered, reclassified, made into something that can be administered and taxed and slotted into the new order's organizational chart. And you find that you would rather be finished than reclassified. This feeling is not reasonable. You know it is not reasonable. You have a wife and 3 children, and the bonds the government gave you will not last more than a few years. And your eldest son is 11 years old. And the question of what his life will look like is one you think about in the middle of the night when you cannot sleep. The reasonable thing is clear. The reasonable thing is the job in the ministry and the Western clothes and the decision to understand the new Japan on its own terms. The reasonable thing is survival. You sit with your swords at night, and you do not practice. You have not practiced in months. There is no one left to practice with, no one left for whom the practice means what it has always meant, and practicing alone feels like talking to yourself in a language that only you still speak. The edge is sharp. You maintain it out of habit, the way you maintain everything, with more care than the situation requires, because the situation has changed and the habits have not, because you are the product of a system that trained you to maintain things perfectly, whether or not anyone was watching. This was supposed to be a virtue. For 400 years, it was a virtue. The New Japan has looked at this virtue and found it charming and useless, the way you find a very old tool charming when you no longer need to cut anything. Your son watches you sometimes, in the evenings when you sit with the swords. He does not ask questions. He's 11, and he understands more than 11-year-olds are supposed to understand, which means he has been listening to the conversations you think he cannot hear. He knows about the bonds. He knows about the ministry job. He knows, though you have not said this, have not said it anywhere, because there is no language for it in the vocabulary you were given, that his father is a man who has outlived the world that made him. He looks at you with something that is not quite pity and not quite admiration, and you recognize it because you have seen it in your own eyes in the morning, in the water, in the surface of a cup of tea going cold. It is the look of someone watching. Something become historical, something that was real yesterday and will be remembered tomorrow and does not know what to do with the in-between. You think about Saigo Takamori. You try not to, but you do. You know men who have already gone south, already made the decision you are still making, already chosen the thing that cannot end in survival. Saigo is building something down in Satsuma that the government calls a rebellion, and that the men going south call something else, something they do not say directly but carry in their bodies, in the way they walk the last time you see them, like men who have finally decided to be exactly what they are for whatever time they have left. You understand this. You understand it the way you understand a sword, not as an idea but as a weight in the hand, a specific gravity, the feeling of something that has only one purpose and is most itself when that purpose is being fulfilled. You have not gone south. You have not taken the ministry job. You are still here in this house, in this city that is remaking itself around you in real time, where men in Western suits walk past men in old clothes and neither group looks at the other directly because the looking would require an acknowledgement that neither group is ready to make. You are still here, sitting with the swords. You are no longer legally permitted to carry, maintaining the edge with more care than the situation requires. Watching your son watch you become history, thinking about a war you know you will not survive, thinking about a ministry job you know you cannot take, thinking about what your father would have done and understanding for the first time that your father never had to answer this question, because your father died before the question existed. Outside, the city has been making noise all day. It is the noise of a city that has decided what it is becoming and is no longer interested in what it was. Construction. New buildings going up in the Western style, with right angles where your architecture has always had curves, with materials that do not breathe the way wood breathes, with a different understanding of what a building is supposed to say about the people inside it. The old buildings say, "We have been here, we have endured. The rain has fallen on us for 200 years and we are still standing." The new buildings say, "We are going somewhere." The new buildings say, "We are not interested in endurance." They say, "We intend to arrive." You have spent your life training to endure. The training was not about fighting, not primarily. It was about the endurance required to be the thing you were trained to be, without deviation, without complaint, day after day for an entire life, maintaining the standard even when no one was watching, even when the standard required something from you that left nothing left over. This is what Bushido actually was. Not the dramatic version, the dying with perfect composure, though that too, yes, but the daily version, the one that required you to be exactly what you were supposed to be on a Tuesday morning, with a cold and a difficult letter and a child who was sick in the night, and a lord whose orders you disagreed with. On that Tuesday morning, you were still a samurai, still maintained the form, still gave what was required. The discipline was not about the sword. The sword was the symbol of a discipline that ran through everything. The New Japan has no category for this kind of discipline. The New Japan measures discipline by production, by output, by the things you make and move and build. A man who maintains a perfect internal form but produces nothing the market can price is not disciplined in the new language. He is idle. He is a drain. He is, in the most honest reading of the government's new policies, a problem to be solved. You remember the first time you saw a telegraph line. It was 7 years ago, before everything, when the new government was still new enough that most people understood it as a novelty rather than a reckoning. You stood beneath the wire for a long time and you thought, this is fast, and you thought, this is powerful, and you thought, this is a kind of communication that does not require a messenger to risk his life. A samurai messenger risking his life to carry a message was, in the world you were trained for, one of the most honorable things a man could do. The message required the body. The body required the courage. The courage required everything that the training produced. The telegraph wire eliminated all of it in a single stroke, more completely than any military defeat, because a military defeat can be recovered from, and a telegraph wire cannot be uninvented. You understood this, standing there. You understood that you were looking at the shape of the future and that you were not in it. You went home and you did not say anything to your wife, because there was nothing to say that would have been appropriate to say, and appropriateness was still at that point something you believed in completely. You are less certain about it now. You wonder sometimes what would have happened if you had said it then, if you had stood under that wire and named what you saw, and started the work of becoming something else before the government forced the question. Whether the path would have been different or only the timing. Whether you would be sitting in the ministry right now in Western clothes, adapted, useful, alive in the way the new Japan defines alive. Whether your son would have a future that you could picture. You cannot picture it. You have tried and you cannot. Not because the future does not exist. It exists. It is happening outside this house right now. The future is loud and it smells like sawdust and coal smoke, and it is very confident about where it is going. But because you do not appear in any version of it that you can see, you have looked. You have looked honestly, which is the only way you know how to look. You do not appear. This is not self-pity. It is cartography. You are trying to understand where you are on the map, and what you have found is that the new map does not have a mark for what you are. The old map had a mark. The old map had a very specific mark, with a name and a set of obligations and a social position and a way of dying. The new map has erased the mark and has not replaced it with anything. Where you used to be, there is now just open country. Your youngest daughter is 4 years old. She does not know what a samurai is. Or rather, she knows that her father is one, and she knows that this means something important, but she does not know what it means, and you have found in recent months that you cannot explain it to her in terms that connect to anything in her daily life. When you were her age, the word explained everything. Now it explains nothing that she can touch or see or eat or wear. You are a samurai, the way some men are believers in a god that no longer performs miracles. The faith is complete. The object of the faith has not changed, but the evidence the world provides is no longer cooperating. The candle is low. You should go to sleep. Your wife has been asleep for 2 hours, and she did not ask you to come to bed because she knows, on the nights when you sit with the swords, that you will not come until you have finished whatever you are doing. And she has never been able to tell you what you are doing because she cannot see it from the outside, and you have not been able to explain it from the inside. You are not sharpening the sword. You are not practicing. You are not, in any sense that the new Japan would recognize, doing anything at all. You are sitting with the last true thing about yourself, and you are doing it while there is still time, because the last true thing about yourself has a deadline now, which is the one thing it never had before. The swords catch the light. They have always caught the light. They will catch the light after you're gone, in a museum, or in a collection, or in the house of someone who finds them beautiful without understanding what they were for, someone who sees the craft and not the purpose, someone for whom they are already historical. This is the distance between you and that person. You remember what it was to live inside the purpose, not outside it. You remember what it was to be the sword and not the museum. You are still inside it, barely, in the last hours before it closes, and you are doing the only thing left to do. You are feeling the weight of it completely, because that is what it means to be the last person to remember something as real. The light is going. You do not move.